This is the London offices of American data and military technology firm Palantir, an increasingly important company, but one that is, like me when someone asks me when the next video is coming out, difficult to pin down. So, what connects this $372 billion tech company that is a committed partner of all three major US intelligence agencies plus border bogeyman ICE and has a literal billionaire ghoul for a co-founder who once said he hates the whole concept of the NHS with this place, my local hospital, once called Mayday, and now Croydon University Hospital? Well, it's a long story. One that involves a £380 million contract with more redactions than a UFO cover-up, 2 fictional villains from Lord of the Rings, and a uniquely extensive database of some 65 million people's medical records. This is the story of the shady American tech company that wants to manage the NHS's medical data and just about everything else in society as well.
They have a website called Consult That.
That's really, that's poor.
In theory, our National Health Service is in urgent need of modernisation. The unified and crucially free public healthcare system is one of the biggest employers in the world that doesn't intentionally kill people on a regular basis. Only the Indian Defence Ministry, the People's Liberation Army of China, the US Department of Defence, Amazon and Walmart employ more than the 1.5 million people that the NHS does. It has a yearly budget of £180 billion and sees around 1 million patient interactions every single day. But, as you might know, by most metrics, it isn't meeting government targets. According to this recent report from the British Medical Association,
the combination of ongoing pressure on services, the backlog of care, and chronic workforce shortages means waiting times have increased to record highs.
in some cases, NHS waiting times are up 103 times from before the pandemic. Admittedly, that is among one of the worst case examples, and some areas are improving. But overall, the data is not looking good for what is, if we're being honest, one of the best projects our country has ever embarked on. One thing that is apparently contributing to this shortfall in NHS services, apart from an underpaid and overworked staff, a huge and bloated bureaucracy and a massive increase in demand, is outdated tech. Imagine a country with a train network where there isn't just one operator, there are many, each with their own ideas of how to do things and bringing their own systems to the table. Surely such a system would inevitably lead to delays and inefficiencies, and no government would ever, or more coherently put by the British Medical Journal,
over time a wide variety of data storage software has been used within and outside hospitals, general practices and other care providers. But the software has struggled to talk to other programs, making it difficult to transfer patients' records between hospitals and sometimes between departments in hospitals.
Anyway, you get the picture. The NHS's data management system is currently a complete cluster. A very large 65 million people sized data cluster. Or, if you're commercially minded, an opportunity. Enter American data and military technology firm Palantir and its plan to solve this problem with a federated data platform across the NHS. So, what is a Palantir? Despite what you may believe, I am not actually a nerd. So to me, a Palantir sounded like something that you might use to eat at a fancy restaurant. But I have been told that it is in fact, or indeed fiction, a magical and highly corruptible communication device used by the two main villains in The Lord of the Rings. Now, I may be a simple fool of a took, but why are we choosing a company that chose to name itself after a villainous device from some movie to manage our entire country's medical data? And yes, before you get in the comments, I know that in Lord of the Rings, the Palantiri aren't inherently evil, only being used by Sauron and Saruman, but actually created by the elves who scattered them throughout Middle-earth before the ages of the Númenóreans in watchtowers. But the fact remains, most people know a Palantir as the mystical magical ball that nearly killed Pippin. Like, we haven't even looked at anything else this company has done yet, and that's already a bit shifty, right? Anyway, Palantir Technologies was founded by Sauron and Saruman, PayPal billionaire Peter Thiel and his mate Alex Karp in 2003. Its main clients right from the start were the major US intelligence agencies, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, Army Intelligence, Navy Intelligence, the DIA, the ONSI, OICI, and the what the f*** lol. Palantir helped centralize data for these various deep state organizations. It created sophisticated surveillance algorithms, AI-powered ranking databases for determining military targets, and a predictive policing system that ended up being racist. It also made a robot tank. Basically, for decades now, Palantir has made it its mission to integrate itself within the American state. In an open letter to Palantir shareholders after its public stock debut in 2020, CEO Alex Karp lambasted Silicon Valley elites, saying, "We have chosen sides." Quite whose side he meant by that is unclear, but I can think of a few candidates. One example might be the person chosen to head up Palantir UK, Lewis Mosley, the grandson of famous fascist Oswald Mosley. Mosley met Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Palantir's Washington, D.C. offices in February this year, where he said of the PM, "You can see it in his eyes, he gets it." As for Peter Thiel, the influential tech billionaire likes to think of himself as a master of the universe who knows what's best for everyone, and fuck your consent.
We could never win an election on getting certain things because we were in such a small minority. But maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through a technological means.
As well as that little bit of egomania, Peter Thiel also said the NHS makes people sick. He wished women didn't have the right to vote and would get rid of democracy if he could. All three things that most of us probably agree are quite good, actually. More recently, in this podcast interview, Thiel called Greta Thunberg the Antichrist and stumbled over whether or not he wanted the human race to continue to survive into the future.
Is it hype? Is it delusion? Is it something you worry about? I think you would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
Hopefully, you can see why many people think that hiring a company like Palantir to manage critical NHS patient data is quite concerning. What if the CIA, or Peter Thiel for that matter, suddenly decided it needed access to a very large medical database, something that very few countries have? Sure, Palantir says it won't own our medical data, but seeing as the only version of the contract we've seen so far was 75% redacted, and big tech firms haven't exactly been known for adhering to laws or morals in recent years, it seems a bit fishy to me and a lot of other people. At a practical level, it feels a bit like hiring MI5 tech experts to manage academy school data. Sure you could, but why? Well, maybe because Palantir is really good at selling itself, or so it thinks.
Everything you learned at your school and college about how the world works is intellectually incorrect. I don't think in win-lose, I think in domination. And I see this question in every single thing we do. I see this with our work with clandestine services. I mean, our product is used on occasion to kill people. Targeting of all kinds. If you're looking for a terrorist in the world now, you're probably using our government product.
Palantir began working with the NHS during the COVID pandemic, initially for just a nominal fee of £1. Great, you might think, but as we've seen in the past with South London's bins, large contractors often lowball their initial bids for public services in order to get ingratiated within the system and then rank up their prices at a later date. In this case, in typical Palantir style, they took that to the max. In 2023, the then Conservative government announced that they'd signed a £330 million contract with Palantir to manage the NHS's medical data under a system called the Federated Data Platform. To be clear, by this point, Palantir did have some more medical and commercial experience, but it seemed that all the privacy concerns over its open and stated links to the various American intelligence agencies didn't bother the Tories, and it hasn't bothered Labour since either. However, some people were bothered by it. The Good Law Project is currently suing the NHS over the contract. These do-gooding lawyers sent a Freedom of Information request to the NHS, which revealed that it had signed the Palantir contract before it had finished negotiating it. 417 pages of this 586-page contract were redacted. Maybe that's because the service it's providing isn't even that good. So far, a majority of NHS hospitals, not Croydon though, have flat out refused to use its services. There are 202 NHS trusts in the UK subject to frequent change. So far, 130 of them have signed up to use Palantir's system. However, only 70 of them are actually currently using it. That's a miserable uptake of just over 30%, 2 years after a £330 million contract was handed out. On top of that, it also cost another £8 million of public money when the soon-to-be defunct NHS England gave a contract to KPMG to sell the Palantir system to NHS hospitals. Yep, that's right. We, the taxpayers, paid hundreds of millions of pounds for a new NHS system upgrade that many hospitals said they didn't even want in the first place. And then we had to pay an expensive marketing firm a further £8 million on top of it to sell it to them. Despite Peter Thiel's God complex and Alex Karp's mean daddy salesman swagger, a lot of NHS hospitals simply maintain that Palantir's FDP system is a bit rubbish.
There are currently no products designed or produced by Palantir Technologies Inc. as part of the FDP programme that exceed the local capability.
In fact, this year, the British Medical Association called on the NHS to suspend involvement with Palantir, calling it an unacceptable choice of partner. Despite all that, Croydon NHS University Trust seems to think it's all right. This blog post from NHS England says that since Croydon hospitals adopted the new Palantir system, same-day cancellations of appointments have gone down by 38%. But quite how that is affected by a new fancy data-sharing algorithm is not explained in real-world terms. Despite that, in June 2025, the hospital still received a requires improvement review score after a visit from the Care Quality Commission. Although staff care was noted as being good, patient monitoring, data sharing and integrated workflow across departments was noted as something that needed to be improved on. That's despite a recent £330 million new data system courtesy of Palantir. In another unrelated development with this story, the Good Law Project was recently the subject of a social media smear campaign that consistently mentioned its opposition to the NHS Palantir contract. Maybe we should get out of here. Look, I'm not against the idea of the NHS's data systems being streamlined, but I am concerned about that being managed by a company that is somehow both comically evil yet ruthlessly efficient at self-aggrandizing. After the BMA's decision to officially reject Palantir's systems earlier this year, their UK chief Mosley had this to say.
I think the BMA has chosen ideology over patient interest. As a patient and a user of the NHS, I want it to be as quick and effective and efficient as possible, and I'm very sad, frankly, that ideology seems to have taken precedent over those interests.
To be frank, mate, yes, it is ideological. Look, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not against the idea of the NHS being streamlined, but I do think that a company with so many overt and open links to foreign intelligence agencies and militaries shouldn't be allowed to manage our medical data. Sue me. Please don't. And that is without considering that a lot of hospitals, not my local one apparently, think that the system isn't really that good. I also found some interesting suggestions from this Med Confidential article and several Reddit threads full of tech heads who have used Palantir's system extensively. They seem to suggest that the new system is mostly just a fancy pants oversold mashup of existing software that probably didn't need a £330 million contract to put together. Which kind of lines up because Palantir is very much in the business of selling ideas. In fact, 2023 was the first year that the company made a recorded profit despite being valued at $375 billion and rising. But what kind of ideas is it selling? Well, mainly, as we looked at earlier, Palantir wants to be the central nervous system of the American government, and now, looking more likely, the UK as well. Palantir now has contracts with the UK government's Cabinet Office, the NHS, and the Department of Defence. Its UK employees include former NHS and civil service officials, and one former head of MI6 has made business introductions for them. That's despite Palantir's new system having a miserable track record of just 30% adoption so far with NHS hospitals, and recently getting a resounding rejection from the BMA. But given Keir Starmer's hard-on for AI and the ruthless efficiency of people like Teal and Karp pushing Palantir's tendrils into every facet of society, they may be here for a while yet. So, will Palantir succeed in turning itself into the brains and nervous system of the UK government? Or is it just another parasite? Maybe. The answer depends on how much we, the people, are willing to do about it. There's a link in the description where you can find out if your local NHS trust has been as enthusiastic about adopting the new system as Croydon has been. And if they are, maybe you can tell them what you think about it. Or better yet, ask to have your data opted out of it. Because if we don't exercise our right to use the power of the people, then people like Peter Thiel are working to ensure that we can't in the future. As usual, shout out to our patrons for sticking by us despite the irregular uploads. And unless I get hit by an attack drone in the next couple of weeks, there's certainly more to come from us very soon. Keep watching the Kronks.